Hi all, we're going to be looking now at Kasparov versus Gelfand in round 11 of the 1993 Linares tournament. This is a real demolition job from the opening. It makes me wonder the level of Kasparov's opening preparation and if most of this game was actually in his preparation. He kicked off with e4 and Gelfand, who is currently rank 11 in the world by the way, played c5. At the time Gelfand was only 2690 in this game, but today he's over 2700. So Kasparov played knight f3, standard stuff, d6, and then the exchange of the centre pawn for the flank pawn, so the most common way of tackling the Sicilian defence. Now after knight f6, knight c3, a6, so this is a very popular move. Now bishop c4, so we see in this game actually, like in the game he beat Anand in a previous round, the underlying simplicity of his winning technique, that it's actually this bishop later which has a really devastating effect on the black king on this diagonal. We're going to see that later. And what's even more interesting from my perspective is the way White wasn't really concerned about black's queenside advances later to try and trap the bishop, or even the bishop not being able to go to c4, at least visually. So that is something to note in this game. So after bishop b3, b5, we see this classic plan. So the black bishop here is often fianchettoing to exert pressure on white's centre pawn. To castles, bishop e7. And now we see a rarer move than what I think is the main line, with either king h1 or f4, where white first tries to use the pawns to sort of break up and gain access to important squares like d5. Instead, Kasparov chooses a piece play method. He plays queen f3, so he's minimally using his pawns, and after queen c7 he now just plays queen g3, so the queen is just already attacking that g7 point. And after castles, it would seem in one way to be a bit academic to play this bishop h6, because although it threatens a direct mate in one, black can just play knight e8, it would seem. However, maybe, you know, this is important to play this to make the knight retreat, because then it's as if white's gained a tempo. Rook a d1 now. So it's indirectly pressurising this d6 pawn. Now bishop d7. And now Kasparov plays knight f3, which has been played a few times before. I've been checking the master collection on letsplaychess.com, and this is quite a high scoring move here, knight f3, this simple retreat. So this knight and this knight are quite good in the attack in this variation, as we'll see. After b4, Kasparov is not concerned about this knight coming, being attacked, because it's going to the king side now, to this dangerous f4 square. After a5, a lot of people might be concerned about this bishop being trapped now, because a4 threatening to trap the bishop. However, everything is on a tightrope here. Kasparov plays knight f4, he ignores this a4, and I'll show you why. a4, just bishop takes g7 would be winning, according to Rybka. It does seem very clear cut. For example, knight takes g7, knight h5, and there's no adequate defence. Say giving the bishop back, knight takes f6, king h8, queen h4, end of game. It'll be mate in 4. Knight h5, queen h5, mating. So, at the moment, white doesn't have to worry about a4 trapping the bishop. So he plays king h. In this position, after knight f4, Gelfand plays king h8. Now bishop g5. So again, another piece is counter-attacked. Black has to do something about that. Now, Gelfand plays knight f6. And again, Kasparov is not worried by the bishop. This time there's a more subtle immunity card thrown at black. Kasparov simply plays queen h4, believe it or not. Now let's look again at trying to trap the bishop. a4, can you see what white could do here? I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rybka thinks bishop c4, and it will be terrible for black if black took this bishop. For example, e5. So e5 opens up an X-ray attack from the white queen to the black queen, as well as exploiting this pin on this diagonal. So this X-ray attack with knight g6 check would actually win black's queen. So black's in dire straits here. So for example, d takes e5, just knight g6 check, followed by winning the queen, queen takes c4. So that's not possible, d takes e5. Let's look at another move, queen c7, just e takes f6, and it's crashing through now. White's attack is completely winning here. Say rook g8, fg7, rook takes, bishop takes e7, devastation. The dark squared bishop is a killer, threatening now bishop f6 or bishop d6, it's all winning. So that's why the bishop is still immune now after queen h4. So usually, the white player is a bit concerned about black's control of the c-file or these advances. But here, Kasparov's got everything covered. Gelfand now plays bishop b5, perhaps reinforcing the idea of playing a4, just to snap with the bishop if bishop c4. But now, an even more spectacular move is played by Kasparov. Simply knight d4. It's hard for Rybka even to estimate this move until it's actually played. Now, what is going on here, you think? If bishop takes f1, knight d takes e6 tears black's king position to shreds, because this bishop, the path is being mowed by these knight sacrifices on this diagonal. F takes e, bishop takes e6, and now there's an immediate threat of knight g6 mate. Forget about this bishop, it's a waste of time capturing that back. Knight g6 mate is threatened. How does black defend this? For example, knight h5, queen takes h5, renewing the threat of mate, and it's all over. What defence is there? There's no defence. If h6, then just taking it, and it's mate in 4 according to Rybka. So this would be tearing the black king position to shreds. This knight takes e6, knight d takes e6. So after this knight d4, Gelfand, the current rank 11 in the world in 2008, played the humble bishop e8, and here we see this bishop still being the path being cleared for it, and also a breakthrough pawn sacrifice on top of that. So we see an initial knight d takes e6 anyway, and after f takes e6, knight takes e6, queen a7. This rook is a handy resource to Kasparov, especially if it can get to d8. Kasparov sees a way of doing that with an initial pawn sacrifice now, e5, and after takes, he takes on f8, now he takes on f6, and now he finally plays rook d8, and this invasion by the rook is a real killer. Gelfand played knight d7, and after queen g4, you see the coordination of the white bishop and queen on this sensitive g8 square. How can black defend this? Let's give an example. Gelfand actually resigned after queen g4, but let's say he played bishop g6 as an example. Queen e6, renewing the threat of queen g8 mate. King g7, and now just rook takes d7, forking queen and king. Huge material lead, still with a massive attack. It's as if Kasparov's opening preparation helped him secure this win in quite a comfortable, easy way. He wasn't concerned about black's semi-open c-file or this bishop being trapped. The bishop actually was a devastating piece for the attack once these two knights cleared the path for the bishop's diagonal with a spectacular knight d takes e6 later. So the bishop was always immune tactically from a4 because of Kasparov's continual threats on the king side. So bishop b5 was perhaps tempting, but after Kasparov's reply, the bishop simply had to retreat, and it was absolute devastation. Perhaps, though, bishop d7 is more solid here, but even so, here Rybka gives a clear advantage to white with knight h5, and there's a lot of pressure on this pin, this diagonal. So knight d4, a devastating mowing for the diagonal, and this breakthrough with e5 as well to get the rook into d8. And now in this position, it was all fairly dire. So Gelfand chose a quick way to lose with knight d7, allowing just queen g4, because if bishop g6, queen e6, with devastating effects. So after queen g4, this was the final position. Gelfand resigned, a crushing defeat of the current world rank 11 Boris Gelfand. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.